Hold on tight for the next hour. You're entering into a place, a zone called the alternative to the alternative media. It's a place, a special place where even truth seekers fear to tread.
All right, people, let's move like we've got a purpose.
Affirmative.
Okay, Greg Anthony here, and glad you are back on the Investigative Journal on this June 29, Thursday, 2017 day on our calendar. My, how the month is going by fast, only a couple days left. And boy, I got a great show for you today, but before I get started, let me say this. I'm running a pledge drive for the next month or so, and if the show lasts that long, not much is coming in. I guess, people just think that shows like this should be done for free. Well, let me tell you, nothing's free in this world, and if you do some good, things for people, you expect to get remunerated, right? Well, anyway, if you listen to this show for a long time, or if you just turned it on and you want to hear more, go to my website at arcticbeacon.com. You can hit the donate button. It goes directly to me. And let's see what we can do to keep this show on the air. If it goes like this, I don't think I have more than a couple weeks. But anyway, we'll see what happens. Okay, today, great show. What I want to talk about first, and we're going to go back in time. I do a lot of stories about the Vatican, as you know, subject that is not covered quite the way it should be in the mainstream media. It's not covered at all, by the way, outside of all the great things about the papacy I brought up there. Everyone bows down to the Pontifex Maximus Pope. And it's just a crying shame, basically. And in the alternative media, it's about the same, so they control that as well. And then you got to deal with all these COINTEL operatives that sometimes contact me. Why don't they donate a little bit? You got more money coming in from the Vatican. Come on. How can you have we're the enemy of the Vatican. You got to have an enemy, right? So keep us going. All right, here we go. Let's go back to when the Vatican used to tell us that the earth was flat. Okay? And then they changed after Copernicus came out, and all of a sudden now they run all the telescopes. They have all these astronomers. If you check, just Google Jesuit astronomers, you'll be surprised how many there are throughout the centuries since Copernicus. And how many are out there today. They have the largest telescope in the country over at Mount Graham in Arizona. So anyway, what I thought to do, I found this video. I mentioned it yesterday. It's about a book. I didn't hear about it. Now, the guy that was going to tell you about this has a European accent. And also, there's nothing wrong with that. It's good to hear. But anyway, the title of it is Edge of Flat Earth Found at Last. This is shocking. And this book explains some things. Now, it's quite technical. Some of it, I'll be honest with you, I don't understand what he's saying, so I wanted to play it. Maybe there's some smarter people out there who can dissect it. Now, I know I'm going to get a bunch of people. There's going to be like 3 or 4 categories. One, there's going to be those who say, yeah, there's so many facts that show that NASA and this concept of the Earth spinning and all this stuff is totally bogus. Then there's going to be those that completely agree with NASA. And then there's going to be those that say, well, it's not important. What are you doing it for? And then there's going to be those that are going to be like, this guy's crazy. So you get a lot of different attitudes. But I don't care at this point. It's always good to question everything, including the ground you walk on, before they take that away. And so let me get right to this presentation. He calls himself the Prophet's Stone, and I will get to it in a second.
The video is inspired by the book Worlds Beyond the Poles, Physical Continuity of the Universe. This book was published in 1959. These days, the book sells on eBay for around $500. I was blown away by this book. If you research stuff like Flat Earth or Hollow Earth, you have to read this book. Let me read the first page of the book, which is very telling. The following pages contain the first and only description of the realistic universe of land, water, oxygen, and vegetation, where human and other forms of animal life abound. This is not a work of fiction, nor is it a technical analysis of anything. It is a simple recital of fact which transcends the most elaborate fiction ever conceived. It is diametrically opposed to the assumptions and mathematical conclusions of theorists and technicians throughout the ages. It is truth. These pages describe the physical land routes from the Earth to every land area of the universe about us, which is all land. Such routes extend from beyond the North Pole and South Pole, so-called ends of the Earth.
Okay, this
as the Greenvine theory. It will here be shown that there are no northern or southern limits to the Earth. It will thereby be shown where movement straight ahead from the
pole points, and this video is going in and out,
and on the same level as the Earth, permits of movement into celestial land areas appearing up or...
Here we go. You'll be hearing my voice in between the video that's going in and out. My computer's acting up today. But anyway...
out from the Earth. A basic version of this book was written and has been expounded at American universities between 1927 and 1930. Since then, the U.S. Naval Research Bureau and the U.S. Navy have conclusively confirmed the work's principal features. Since December of 1928, U.S. Navy polar expeditions have determined the existence of land extent beyond both pole points. Out of bounds of the assumed isolated globe, Earth as postulated by the Copernican theory. On January 13 of 1956, as this book was being prepared, a U.S. Naval Air Unit penetrated the extent of 2,300 miles beyond the assumed south end of the Earth. That flight was always over land and water and ice. For very substantial reasons, the memorable flight received negligible press notice. The United States and more than 30 other nations prepared unprecedented polar expeditions for 1957 and 1958 to penetrate land now proved to extend without limit beyond both pole points. This work provides the first account of why it is unnecessary to attempt shooting up or out from the terrestrial level for a journey to any of the astronomically named celestial land areas. It relates why such attempt would be futile. These pages present evidence that the same atmospheric density of this Earth prevails throughout the entire universe. Such a feature proves that, except for the presence of a gaseous sky envelope and underlying oxygen content equivalent to that of the Earth, we could never observe the luminous celestial areas designated as a star or planet. The observed luminous areas of the universe about us represent celestial sky areas, and they are as continuous and connected as all areas of this Earth's continuous and connected sky. Hence, it is shown that there are no globular or isolated bodies to be found throughout the entire universe. They are elements of lens deception. This work is radically and rightfully opposed to astronomical conclusions of all ages. It depicts the illusion developing from all telescopic observations and photographs. It clearly explains and vividly illustrates why those lens-developed illusions have been mistakenly accepted as facts. This work projects man's first understanding of the factual and endless universe, which contains human life throughout its vast length and width, regardless of all abstract theory to the contrary. This book claims to be non-fiction based on facts. Endless land with human life beyond poles? No one is talking about this book on YouTube. I only found 2 good videos so far, one from Chippy the Chipmunk and another great video from Flatness. I will link these videos in the description. Here are some other interesting parts I took out of the book. February of 1947. I'd like to see that land beyond the pole. That area beyond the pole is the center of the great unknown. Admiral Richard Byrd before his 7-hour flight over land beyond the North Pole. November of 1955. This is the most important expedition in the history of the world. Admiral Richard Byrd before departing to explore land beyond the South Pole. January of 1956. 13 members of the United States expedition accomplished a flight of 2,700 miles from the base at McMurdo Station, which is 400 miles west of the South Pole, and penetrated a land extent of 2,300 miles beyond the pole. Most of you probably know about the interview Admiral Byrd gave on the television. Here is a small part of it.
Our guest tonight found out whether there was any land north of the North American continent. He made that first discovery flight, and I must say that Admiral Byrd, our guest tonight, is not only our greatest living explorer, but he's been an inspiration to countless Americans. Admiral Byrd, you've been to both the North Pole and the South Pole. Is there any unexplored land left on this earth that might appeal to adventurous young Americans?
Yes, there is. And not up around the North Pole, because it's getting crowded up there now, because they find out it's really usable, not only to live in, but militarily. But strangely enough, there's left in the world today an area as big as the United States that's never been seen by a human being. And that's beyond the pole, on the other side of the South Pole, from Little America. And I think it's quite astonishing that there should be an area as big as that unexplored.
There is no physical end to the Earth's northern and southern extent. There is no space between areas of the universe, but there must deceptively appear to be space in all observations. That apparent space results from the illusory globularity and isolation of the celestial sky areas. The concept that the universe is made out of globular and isolated bodies originated from the curvature that is created by all lenses. The bodies are an illusion. The ancient conclusion of Galileo that luminous celestial areas are isolated from each other and are circling in space was founded on the inescapable errors of lens functioning. The circling movement is an illusion. In an endless land and sky universe, the undulating or billowing of luminous sky gas must deceptively appear as a circling or ellipsing movement. The deceptive appearance develops from the fact that such gaseous sky movement is detected by a circular lens. Under the mobile sky gas, which extend throughout the celestial realm, there is undetectable but very factual land, water, vegetation and life like on this earth or realm. Optical illusions result from the function of the human eye lens, and all photographic and telescopic lenses are patterned after the optic lens. Lens function demands lens convergence, which causes the deceptive curvature created by the lens into a disc-like proportion reflecting the roundness of all lenses. Every area of the Earth's continuous and unbroken outer sky surface would express the identical deceptions when observed and photographed from high altitude and from celestial land areas. In 1927, science was without knowledge that any terrestrial sky area would be luminous when observed from beyond the sky. The first observation and photograph was achieved by Professor Auguste Piccard in 1931. I made a video about him recently. Piccard had not achieved sufficient altitude for a completely dark stratosphere background, which would probably express outer sky luminosity. That disk development, which was referred to as an upturned disk, was partial only because sufficient distance had not been achieved from the gaseous sky area. Photographs that were taken in 1946 with V2 rockets at an altitude of around 65 miles showed a deceptive disk-like and isolated sky area over White Sands, New Mexico and adjacent territory. These rocket camera photographs at greater altitudes hold most sensational confirmation of physical continuity. The stars and planets are connected luminous celestial sky areas with underlying land. The Earth cannot be circumnavigated north and south. A few around the world flights have contributed to popular misconception that the Earth has been circumnavigated north and south. All progressive movement beyond the pole points leads beyond the assumed end of the globe Earth, and that land beyond constitutes a land connection with the celestial. The connecting land appearing up or out from terrestrial points other than the poles is attainable by movement straight ahead from the imaginary pole points. This is not 1927. The existence of worlds beyond the poles have been confirmed by US naval exploration during the 30 years since then. According to this book, this is an illustration of the universe. Understand that this is not a shape of the real universe, but it illustrates how we see the universe. The way our eyes work creates this illusion. Here is another illustration. We live on the bottom, on the terrestrial land surface, and above us is a layer of air and oxygen. Above that we have curved parts that represent the sky areas, which are luminous when viewed from above. Above that we have the stratosphere, and above that we have the celestial level that is the same as the terrestrial. As above, so below. Since up is always relative, our celestial cousins look up or out through their inner blue sky as we do through ours, and behold the same nightly star pattern that we witness. Contrary to popular misconception based on the illusory shooting up or out from any location of the terrestrial or celestial, would take the explorer away from the universe structure and project him into infinite space. Place your thumb on the illustration's stratosphere section, then draw it towards you. That will describe where the space explorer would go. If he did not land back on some land area of the terrestrial, he would be completely lost in space wherein the universe was constructed, or he would be projected up on some terrestrial area remote from the point of flight origin. Any spaceship launched, and there is no doubt that it could be launched, would either be lost in space infinite or be returned to some area of the Earth. The universe is so ordered that power increase to overcome the arc of flight would precipitate the spaceship away from the universe. On the other hand, insufficient power would restrict the spaceship to the movement of all projectiles, and it would have to conform to the arc of flight, which would return it to some land area of the terrestrial. Up is always relative to the position we hold anywhere in the universe structure. When we stand on the land up there, this terrestrial land we have left behind will have to appear to be up to our observation from a celestial area. Sitting in the nose of a rocket that is at an altitude of 500 miles from Earth's surface, will have lost sight of where it entered the dark stratosphere. Then, wherever we look, we will observe the luminous points astronomically designated. As we look at the sky area covering the land surface we departed from, there will be seen the same luminous points that envelop us from every angle of observation. Then, as altitude is increased, the lights of the celestial will bear no areas. And as the universal skylight will not be arranged in a greater relation of up, the lights of the terrestrial sky direct course over and under our rocket, but will appear at every angle. Up is in fact everywhere. The so-called heavens above are everywhere. The factor of ice covering for polar areas results from the positions of such areas in relation to the universe whole, and from the distribution of magnetic forces throughout the universe. The magnetic dispensation varies in accordance with the natural laws governing its universal distribution. The scripting material dealing with Antarctica mentions that penguins and whales abound in this previously assumed desolate area of ice and eternal darkness. and that the mountains hold a fortune in coal and ores. As land, mountains, minerals and animal life are found to constitute the Antarctic area this side of the South Pole, land, vegetation and life are to be found as progress is made beyond the pole. At that particular pole point and for a distance beyond are experienced the most intense winds and blizzards, which act as a barrier to progress beyond the Earth. Such conditions seem to be an expression of divine will, which demands that terrestrial man be receptive to cosmic values before he is permitted to penetrate the ice barrier. Beyond the barrier will be found a warmer climate with land and waterways, and it is there that celestial cousins await terrestrial man's arrival, and if one asks how far beyond, it will suffice to record that the distance is negligible with modern transportation speed. The universe is not constructed in the manner of an enormous pinwheel, nor is any area thereof globular or spherical in reality, nor is any area isolated from its neighboring area. Areas of the flywheel universe, as shown in this illustration, could readily be drawn to the cylindrical. Then every connected land area of the celestial and the terrestrial could be undulating through the power of every area's magnetic energy. The undulating would be toward and away from the sun, and the sun would be moving in its unchanging course along the entire universe structure. The sun's continuous movement along the universe course would at one season of our terrestrial year be toward the terrestrial area. At another period of the year it would be moving away from the terrestrial areas. There is land under all celestial and terrestrial skylight. There are no globular bodies in motion. Ever-active sky gases are responsible for all detected motion which the lens detects. They also influence the spectrum. Duality of gas motion can exist, but duality of bodies can never exist. This was embraced as early as 1927. It was disclosed that every sky area of Earth would, through the motion of gaseous content, deceptively appear to be circling or revolving. What if this book is reality? What if it's true? Can you imagine what would happen if the people find out about this? I don't know if it's true or not, but for me it was a very interesting book to read. I made this video so that you know what the book is about, and I hope some more people will read it and maybe make a video about it. Anyway, big thanks to watch it. Before I go, one more thing I want to say. I started a new website called FEFriends.com, which stands for Flat Earth Friends. It's a website where you can meet other flat earthers. I made it so that people can find each other and share information, maybe make new friends. That's what it's all about. If you're interested, check it out. If not, thanks for watching the video and bye-bye.
Okay, I've got about 35 seconds here. I'm going to take a little time with the break to digest what he said. And there are parts in there that I might add I don't quite understand. Perhaps others do. But it's always good to have new ideas, right? So, that didn't fall particularly in the category of what a lot of flat earthers have been saying. And it didn't, of course, fall into the category of those who believe in the Copernicus theory. So it's good to listen. It's good to explore. And Byrd, the key point there, Admiral Byrd went 2,300 miles past McMurdo Bay there. That's where they put that fake stick and say, this is the end of the South Pole. Now you know why they have an Antarctica treaty among 60 nations where you can't pass that point. They don't want you to know what's out there. And I bet you it goes a lot farther than 2,300 miles. Back in 3 minutes on the Investigative Journal.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org. When it comes to prophecy today, much of the evangelical Christian world has their eyes on Israel, waiting and watching to see when the third temple will begin to be built. The plans are drawn. The Jewish people are eager. Most evangelical Christians today believe that the rapture will happen before the third temple is built. Hi, I'm Michael Eugene. I was taught that Daniel's 70th week was in the future. Is that really what the Bible teaches? Have we searched the scriptures and found this to be true? Why is it so important for a re-established Israel to build a third temple in Jerusalem? Is it necessary to build a temple on the same location already occupied by the Dome of the Rock? Is it necessary for sacrifices to take place in the temple on Temple Mount? Is there really a rapture followed by 7 years of tribulation? What is the New Testament temple? Can we identify history and prophecy? Who is the first beast in Revelation chapter 13? Who are the 7 kings in Revelation 17? I have asked all these questions, and I have found Nicholas Arthur's new book, When the Third Temple is Built, answers all these questions and more using Scripture to interpret Scripture. The Bible says that no prophecy of Scripture is of any private interpretation. Nicholas shows us in his new book, When the Third Temple is Built, how the Bible interprets prophecy and not man's private interpretation. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org.
The following program is labeled dangerous and off limits by the supreme Jesuit command. But stand tall, people. Listen up, and you may just learn something.
Oh, dear Lord Jesus, this ain't happening, man. This can't be happening, man. This ain't happening.
Okay, back for the second half hour of the Investigative Journal on this Monday, June 26th. Hope you're doing well, and the week got off to a good start. And don't forget, go to my website at arcticbeacon.com, hit the donate button. I'm running a pledge drive for the next couple months to see if I could keep this show on the air. And hopefully we can do that. You know, before I get back to Phil Jahan and that 2007 interview I did with him, sometimes I get these newsletters that are sent to me to keep me abreast of the supposed alternative news. That's the stuff you don't get on the mainstream, right? And there's a couple of them out there, and every day I'm just stunned at the nonsense that comes off of these supposed truth seekers. Not one mention about anything important like what me and Phil were just talking about. And let me give you just a little taste of what was in the news, the alternative news, today. Okay, here's the first one. California geologists warn of mega quake. The big one is going to happen. You know, they're always spreading this fear, you know, so that you don't have enough ability to think. And then never is there one of these newsletters I get that doesn't have the alien agenda, the fake alien agenda, always as if it's real. Folks, it isn't. Ancient alien civilizations exist, say this article. The man who lived with extraterrestrials for 10 days. What's this one? Oh, both Putin and Obama feared an alien attack. Is Trump joining them now? What? Let's keep going. Let's read a couple more of these. The dogs seem to be a little annoyed with it as well. Okay, here's a little bit of an interesting. Illuminati exposed. New decrypted $100 bill shows nuclear devastation of New York City. All right, you got to go in with a magnifying glass on the $100 bill. How many people out there have $100 bills? Most Americans haven't. You know, there was a study. I don't know where they do these studies, but they said that 70-80% of Americans don't have savings of less than $2,000. Okay. U.S. Navy is scrambling. Now, this story caught my eye, and I don't know if you followed the mainstream news, but there was supposedly a big cargo ship ran into a Navy destroyer. Now, this destroyer left where I was, in San Diego, and a number of sailors were killed. I'm looking at the damage, and one of those big tankers, I used to see them come in all the time in the port. Oh, they're huge, car tankers. They're carrying hundreds of thousands of pounds of. And it just rammed this Navy ship and breached its hull under the waterline, and a number of people were killed. Now, the Navy reported that it was an accident, but really, if you watch somebody did they looked at the path that this cargo ship took, and it did a circular path, so it passed the Navy ship, then came back and rammed it. Looks like it was terrorism to me. But anyways, is this the way they're going to start the next war? All it takes is one of those, just one little thing like that, right? So anyway, that's some of the things on the alternative news. That's why I'm called the alternative to the alternative. Because you don't hear anything about the Vatican or the real New World Order, the Vatican-led New World Order, and all the names and places and dates we give you here. Back to Phil Jahan. This is an interview I did with him in 2007. And here we go. Let's see. I'm going to get it up here real quick, get it potted up, and here we go.
Leaves them nameless, leaves them faceless. And people can't fight an entity that they don't know. If you don't know your enemy, how can you fight them? So, in diplomacy, because, you just can't, as we, walk around on the internet and just trash everybody, or just speak your free mind, just showing some diplomacy, I tell people that they can use Alex Jones to come, some ways. They can learn some things from him. But, he won't take them the whole way.
Well, the dangerous thing with him is that, and these people like him and many others, they mix truth with fiction. And what I mean by that is they do not, when people call up and start wanting to talk about this issue seriously, they mix truth with fiction and it makes them more dangerous. And that's why, in a sense, I might take a little bit harder stance and say this is worse than the mainstream media, because a little bit of truth can take a person down the wrong path, and that's what these guys do. And they need to be censored, in a sense, and outed. And what I mean by censored is that let them talk, but at least understand where they're coming from. Because many people take these guys' words as gospel, and they take over the alternative media, and that's their job. And it's basically what freedom of speech is all about. Yeah, they need, and I won't put up with it, for one. And will not walk a fine line with Alex Jones one bit. If he wants to come on and debate me about anything he talks about, I'd love to ask him, how the hell did you get into Bohemian Grove unless you know somebody?
Well, I'd like to know where he went to school. I'd like to know what jobs he had before he got into, alternative broadcasting. There's lots of things I'd like to know. For people that listen to, Alex Jones, I think, if they start listening, carefully with a little bit of discernment, they'll see some of the things that we're talking about. He'll go on and on and on about the global elite. He'll go on and on about the international bankers, and these global fascists and the Illuminati, but he'll never tell you that the Illuminati, were created by the Vatican. The first modern day branch of the Illuminati was created in 1534 by Ignatius de Loyola. And, he was the first Jesuit, and he was basically, given this position, to start the Jesuit order, and the Illuminati in 1534 to crush the Protestant rebellion with the very thing that you started this phone call out with, okay? They crushed the Protestant rebellion by genocide, okay, and torture, and fear, and terror. And all of the torture devices that we know today, by modern man, when we go to these web pages and we see the Iron Maiden, when we see these, flailing hooks, when we see the chair of pain, the chair of pins, the hot burning chair, all these different instruments of torture were made by the Vatican. Most of them were made by the Dominicans, which, were later superseded and, basically replaced by the Jesuits.
Mm-hmm.
The second modern day order of the Illuminati, is started by Adam Weishaupt on May 1st, 1776, May Day. And these things are not hard to see in an internet search. You can go to Google and, just Google Illuminati, the founding of the Illuminati origins, and you'll see these things in 5 minutes. Which is why I really do honestly have a hard time with Alex Jones when, a caller will call up after he goes on about the global elite, the fascists, the Illuminati, the global bankers, international scamsters that are out to, make, enslave him and turn us into a prison planet. But then somebody will call up and say, hey, the Illuminati were created by the Vatican. And he'll go off onto this rant. Well, I don't know what to tell you here, but I really just don't subscribe to this. The Vatican is just basically a whole bunch of old men, and they run an age-old church, and they've got power, but it's been subverted, and you got to realize that the Vaticans are the victims here. Actually start going on about the Vatican, and becoming an apologist for it.
Yeah, and it just makes me, like I tell people, it's that, how could he ignore the Abraham Lincoln story? And we've covered that on this show many times. And
how about
even
Daniel Morris?
Right, and even Abraham Lincoln warning Americans of the Vatican and the Jesuit order. Now, who are you going to believe, Alex Jones or Abraham Lincoln? And why won't he cover that? I mean, if he's such a historian, it's just too obvious to me, and he knows it, and he'll never have me on his show because of it, and I don't really care, because I found out the hard way by talking to him, by actually being on his show a number of times, and that's when I was covering a lot of 9/11 stuff, but as soon as I started doing the Vatican, he just cut me off, and then I started thinking, who is this guy? I mean, here I am. I could sit on a radio station and tell you exactly who I am. I used to start it out as a journalist. I got a college degree from Western Illinois University. I played football there. Worked as a journalist many years. Worked in Rome for 6 years. Came back, started my own newspaper. I had two small, just really local yokel newspapers. Got myself a law degree. And I do have a law degree, a JD degree. And I started writing again. Now, that's who I am. Now, when I met these guys in the alternative medium, I took them at face value. I said, hey, if they're trying to get at the truth, let's do it. But what I found was a concerted effort by all these people. And let me name some of these names. John Stadtmiller, Michael Collins Piper, the editor of the American Free Press, Eric Ricardo, Eric Huffschmidt,
Carol Brandon Smith.
Daryl Bradford Smith, Chris Bowen. Then we go to, who's that rich guy that used to build, Jimmy Walters, and all these guys. And then we go to the Genesis line of Alex Jones, Jack Blood, the rest of these people, all not covering this issue. Jeff Rentz, put him in the mix. All of these people who I was on their shows, the Power Hour with Van Kleist and Riley, and all these people, I was on their shows in the beginning. But once I touched the Vatican, I'm not on one show now. They will not mention my name. And, you know, how they love to plug each other. And that is basically the alternative media. They control this stuff. They spend a lot of money. Jones is on a number of stations, and so is Riley and the rest of these guys. And they pay, I bet you, over $100,000 a month just on fees to get on AM stations across the country. So these guys are floating a lot of money around to get this message out while they mute the message of the Vatican.
Well,
what does it tell you, Phil?
Doing some investigations on Alex Jones's radio connections. You said he has about 50 affiliates, if I remember correctly. Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't you say that he would call 10 or 11 or 12 of these affiliates to see if they were pay stations? And
yeah. I mean, I knew a couple agents who were going to put me on some pay stations, and they're, you know, $250, $350, $500 an hour. And he said that Jones is on a whole bunch of these stations. And my question is, where the hell does he get all that money? I mean,
where does it come from? You know,
right.
I mean, that's a good question. And, you know, it's like, you know, a ministry or a service as large as Alex Jones's, you know, I mean, you know, transparency would be a good thing. I mean, you know, if he's rich and he's funding it himself, you know, he doesn't have to say it all the time, you know, but it would be nice to have the transparency to know. You know, I am in this movement. I've been able to do what I've been able to do for full time for about 4 years because I spent my life savings doing it. You know,
exactly, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I am not about to cover any
money.
Story.
I'm broke now, so you know, I spent my money just like you did. You know, you know, we're you know, working off the small amount of sales that you got on your website for you know, vital support, and you still are. And you know, I hope people out there realize that, you know, while the news is free to them, you know, that, I mean, we really do need to be supported. And, you know, without trying to make it into an infomercial, you know, it is important that, you know, if people are out there learning about this information, getting this information, that if they're able to, without breaking their pocketbook, if they don't have overdue gas bills and electric bills, you know, and they can afford it, then they should, you know, donate what they can to, you know, help, you know, services and ministries like this, you know, stay afloat, you know, and, you know, because there's not enough of that, and it's drying up as we get farther away from the event horizon of 9/11, you know, that support, those donations, the purchases of books and DVDs are becoming less and less, and it's becoming harder and harder to do, and more frustrating because of that.
Yeah, exactly. And so what you need to do is to look at these people that are controlling the alternative media and understand that they mix a lot of truth, a lot of stories that are good, with a wrong, with a misconception of who's at the top and how this is operating. Because,
well, you know, Greg, you know, I don't want to cut you off here, okay? You know, I just took the phone away from Phil, but, you know...
Well, we do have Alex Jones on the line right now. Alex, nice to have you.
Yeah, just let me talk, Greg. You know, at the top of the food chain, you know, we've got, you know, the globalists, you know, the elite, the Illuminati. They're here to take your freedoms away, to turn this into a prison planet. They're in your face. They're doing it every day. They sacrifice babies in barns. These people are the worst scum of the earth. You know, Greg, it breaks my heart. Sometimes I just cry, you know, going through this material. You know, but I just told you who's at the top. So, I mean, what's your beef with me anyways?
Well, I'll tell you what, Alex, I don't think you're telling the truth about the Vatican. I think you're covering for them, and I think you're actually getting paid by them.
Now, I don't even really know how you can say that. You must never come to my website because I've got a guy named Freeman, you know, and I've got a video of his on my website on one of the back pages. It's not on the front page anymore, of course. You know, I mean, there's moving stories, you know, very active website. Hundreds of thousands of people a day come here. But I've got a video from Freeman that shows that the Roman Empire never fell. I mean, will nothing make you happy? You know, I mean, what do I need to do?
Well, you need to cover the story about the Vatican. When people call, you say that the Vatican is just this benign religious group, has nothing to do with the head of the Illuminati or the control over George Bush. And you never mention the Jesuit order and how they've infiltrated religion. How they've infiltrated you.
We honestly just, have a difference of opinion there, Greg. I look at the it's the global bankers, and international financiers who have basically, done this to us. They're the ones that are behind the curtain. It isn't some little old man in a white dress, with a fish's hat. You got to understand that the Vatican itself has been subverted.
Oh, that's a good one.
They've been subverted by the international bankers, Greg.
Oh, they have. Interesting. What about what Abraham Lincoln said, that beware the Jesuits in Vatican, for they will take your liberty away if you allow it to happen?
Can you source the code for that? Where exactly did you get that reference from, Greg?
No, it's from Abraham Lincoln in letters that were written to a Catholic priest named Father Chiniquy, who was Abraham Lincoln got off on a rape charge when the Jesuits tried to get rid of Father Chiniquy for spreading the Bible message back around the time of the Civil War. These are documented records. We also have Samuel Morris's book, the inventor of the Morse code and the telegraph, stating the same thing, as well as people, many people.
I think part of your answer there, Greg, is, the timing. Okay, we're looking at, the 1850s and 60s. Okay, this is what you're talking about, right? Are you even aware of the Vatican's, history, Greg? Do you realize that the Papal States fell in 1870? Do you know that? Do you know that they almost lost all their power? They lost their territory. The rise of popular governments, was sweeping Europe. America was a rising power. Don't you realize that they lost all their power, right about the same time that you're talking about, Greg?
Well, I don't think so, because from my research and from research people that have my show, they've become even more powerful today. And we can document their immense holdings all over the world, including the Jesuit order having 28 universities in this country. And by the way, didn't you just speak at a Catholic university?
I can neither confirm nor deny that, Greg.
Okay, as you can tell, we took a break back there. I did 2 hours with Phil. I remember I used to do 4 hours of radio every day. And kind of an interesting little discussion we had there, wasn't it? Well, let's go back to the second half hour. That first hour, I got about 6 minutes here and finish up. And it opens up with what JFK said. That's how we used to start the show back then.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States in 1963.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. But we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no secret is revealed. That is why the Athenian lawmaker Sill decreed it a crime for any citizen to shrink from controversy. I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people, confident that with your help, man will be what he was born to be, free and independent.
Okay, that's how I started the show back then in the second half hour for a while. And I only got about 3 minutes left, so instead of starting again with Phil, why don't I bring him back tomorrow? We can get to that second half hour. And also, I did want to mention this. Go to my website at arcticbeacon.com, and you can get shows going back over a decade regarding the Vatican-led New World Order. And don't hesitate to press that donate button. You heard what we were talking about there on the show, and that was 10 years ago. And really, what he said, is true. As the years go by, it gets harder and harder to get this message out. Will it come to the point one day in history when there's no one out there trying to get at this story, and the Vatican will be let loose on humanity finally once and forever without any dissent or criticism? Could it really happen? And the question is, if you stand strong, you have to figure it out yourself. And shows like mine help you do that. We're kind of like a guidepost when you're traveling in the wilderness looking for things like this, when you're trying to figure things out. That little show we did about Jones back in 2007 surely helped a lot of people. And today, more and more people realize who he is. But look, he's already made it to the top. He was on Megyn Kelly's show on NBC, right with the boys, right with the other COINTEL people on the mainstream. So we know who he is. 10 years later, that show I did was set 10 years ago. We're talking like that. And as time passed, I think his coverage and what he's doing proves the point. And there's so many others like him out there. And so shows like this need to be supported. And there's other people around that are doing things like this, and they do too. So don't forget that. Because people like Jones and others and all those people, they're getting their money from the Vatican coffers and from institutions that are set up, the tentacles, their financial tentacles that spread far and wide. And so they don't have to worry about money. And they're given thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars, perhaps even millions, to control the Internet. It's an important source of information, and they need to control it. You are the people that can help stop that control, and do that by helping shows like mine out. So again, go to www.arcticbeacon.com and hit that donate button. Okay, I'm going to bring Phil back tomorrow on that interview. It was quite interesting and brought back a lot of good memories to me. And I'm trying to figure out, where the heck was I in 2007? I'm going to think about that till tomorrow's show. So have a good evening. Thanks for coming back, and we'll see you again tomorrow on the Investigative Journal.
The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host, Melody Cedarstrom, right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free, 1-800-375-4188.